Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Rarity, Pinkie, Pi, Ditzy, Luna and more Anthro ponies. Part 1. Huge shout out to QP16 for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. It had been a peaceful last few decades. The endless cycle of violence momentarily on hold. Uzumaki Naruto was enjoying the life of a retired and dutiful grandfather. He had retired 3 decades ago and took to traveling the world and meeting new people, routinely returning to the village every 6 or so months to visit his family members or give advice to Sarada, the current Hokage. A few years had passed since Hinata passed away peacefully in her sleep, bless her soul. The children they had together had grown up and started families of their own. The village was thriving and everything seemed to be going well. Then a few days later it happened. First was the message from Sasuke detailing the threat of a new enemy. Then there was the massacre on the moon, with the remnants of the Itachi survivors forced onto the planet to escape the creature. And then it happened. Sasuke was mortally wounded. The Avengers' last act of redemption, giving his eyes to the retired Rokudaime Hokage to fight off this new threat. Despite his old age, Naruto still had power left in his body. The elderly sage and man would not stand by when there was some force out there threatening their home. So he would face it head on. Even if on the off chance he failed, at the very least he could buy the 5 nations time to combat this new threat. Is this all the planet has to offer? Old men as their only defense. The black draconic-like mask taunted the blonde. As Naruto expected, the creature was on the moon within where Kagaya was sealed. Segments of the masked body had been torn out. I won't bother offering you any chances to surrender. A merciless monster like you, there's only one way this exchange will go. His retirement and long life allowed him much time to sharpen and hone his skills. Instantly Naruto activated the path's powers and began opening up with a great fireball shower as the fireball showered down at the mass. The creature reacted by lashing out with several dark tendrils, but just as quickly Naruto countered with a super great breakthrough attack. The massive gust of wind did little to slow down the black mass. I see you're as strong as the other one. I better take this a bit more serious. Glad I'm not disappointing, Naruto replied, Shinra Tensei. The jutsu blasted the being back, sending him crashing towards the ground. Naruto leaped sideways over the bursts of purple crackling energy that erupted from the being. Bansho Tenon. The creature was then jolted forward as Naruto flickered through hand seals and his hands lit ablaze with a chidori before it plunged in the creature's midsection. It let out a warbled hiss as it lashed at the blonde who jumped away. With these eyes, he could see everything, but trying to handle all the new visual data was causing him a headache. He needed to end this fight quickly. He then boosted himself, delivering a kick to the creature's face, sending it crashing back again. The creature was slow, but he was damn durable. The creature quickly recovered as his mass shimmered and shifted. A massive wall of black liquidly darkness expelled from his body, covering an expansive range and heading towards Naruto. Making use of the battleground surface, he erupted several earth walls to tank the attack, long enough to get out of its range, before the attack dissolved the walls. Naruto's danger sense then went haywire, making him body flicker away from his current position as jet black spikes sprouted from where he was previously standing. It was time to fall back on an old classic. Putting his fingers in the familiar cross-eye, an army of Naruto shadow clones appeared, creating multiple massive Rasengan as they used Haration to dodge the creature's massive tendrils and weird energy bombs launched at him. The attacks tore through the mass, reducing most of the creature's body to shreds. Nearly all his clones were wiped out by the backlash. He wouldn't give this creature a moment to regenerate. He needed to hit it harder. Harder than any enemy he fought before. Naruto began to gather both positive black chakra and negative white chakra around the Rasengan while adding the 5 main natures to it. The white sphere had a black core as it was flickering between the colors of nature. It was just as Sasuke said. Each time the creature damaged, its recovery time needed to heal was doubled. Just as it reformed and tried to defend itself, Naruto shaped the attack into the form of a Rasenshuriken and hurled it. The resounding roar of the attack echoed as the shockwave blasted Naruto backward and the light of the energy nearly blinded him. He was nearly a second too late to avoid the crest that formed under him as he used substitution with one of the logs he had brought with him to the battlefield. The strange energy caused the log to darken charcoal black and thump to the ground. That same weird char that had covered Sasuke's left arm and leg, which post-examination had revealed both limbs devoid of life completely. Hashirama. Let's hit him with everything we have. Naruto communed as they performed a perfect unison, the chakra blasting outwards and shaping into the form of the mighty Kitsune. The Bijuadama that formed was nearly instantaneously as the creature let out some sort of chant in a language he didn't recognize, forming 5 crests between him the Bijuadama. The attack ripped through the 4 crests, slowly down after each quest before enveloping the last crest and detonating, simply erasing the top portion of the surface, caving into the small man-made structure. This, to think there was a mortal with this much power. The creature regenerated again, only being the twice of a normal human, instead of towering over him like a behemoth. It had collapsed to one knee and seemed to be breathing deeply. Naruto disengaged the unison, not wanting to damage the shell that kept Kagaya sealed any more than he did now. Creating a clone, he was already preparing not only another super-powered great spiraling sphere, but also a sealing array to seal this monster like Kagaya, if killing it was impossible. My mistress Nightmare Moon, forgive my failure to release you from your imprisonment early. Accept this failed servant, Shadowfright's offering, as a potential concubine for your heirs and a slave to add his power to your arsenal. In this world lacking ambient magic, resulting in less power than he was normally accustomed to. He would have to drag the creature to his world, weaken and capture him, in hopes of this offering would please his mistress. In the blink of an eye, a vast array of crests began filling the area. Despite Naruto's best efforts of landing his attack and nearly eradicating the creature to non-existence, he was enveloped by the strange energy and torn away from the area, away from his homeland, away from everyone he knew, to parts unknown. Inside the eloquent structure of a castle, a lone bipedal equine figure was walking down a long hallway as he made way to his destination. As he moved along the marbled floor, the soft echoes of his hoofed feet could be heard. He soon arrived at high destination, stopping in front of a set of large golden and white double doors with intricate equine designs on it. Golden curved handles adorned the doors as well as acting as a means into the room. In front of these large double doors stood 2 ashen gray furred equines wearing white and gold armor that was enchanted to give them a synonymous appearance. Though the blonde equine towered over them in size, the 2 guards radiated a good deal of magic. The armors dimly gleamed in the sunlight while being full body so that the vital organs weren't exposed. No words needed to be spoken, merely a nod was given to him as the guards recognized the figure. They stood aside, allowing the blonde entrance to the private study of the princess. Few ponies were allowed access to this room. Princess Celestia. The equine called out to her as he entered deeper into the room. A year had passed since that bold and fateful encounter. He remembered that day quite well. It was a warm and sunny evening. The windows were cracked open so the room was far from stuffy, unlike many of the archive rooms within the castle. He had been trying to gather information on this world in hopes of not only understanding this world better, but information on the creatures responsible for dragging him here in the first place. To his surprise, when the princess entered the archive, she was observing him for some time. Of course, like any competent ruler, she was assessing the situation to see if he was a threat or what his motives were. He had struck up a conversation with her with such casualness that it had caught her off guard. After all, between her immense magical powers along with the fact she was the one responsible for raising the sun and moon, she was heralded as a goddess among her kind. Her power alone was not the only reason she was heralded as so. In comparison to all others, she was by far rather statuesque in comparison to all other ponies. She was a good few inches above 8 feet tall, towering over most of her subjects. Her fur was white, pure, the coat having a sort of a faint luminescence glow to it, with her mane a soft and shimmery polychromatic pattern of colors, including a light turquoise, violet crystal, and with shades of cerulean and cobalt. Her form was voluptuous with an ample chest, long legs and an all-around appealing figure. She was wearing a white lace dress that loomed down to her ankles, with the rest of her outfit consisting of a golden crown with an assortment of royal gems encrusted in it, along with golden horseshoe adornments that she wore on her hooves. The room was rather modest as its size was large enough to contain a few dressers filled with parchments and books. There were several windows with violet and gold trimmed window curtains as sun rays shined into the room. The desk was also of a fine imported wood with the look of a black leather sort of texture. There behind the desk sat Celestia, who seemed to be going over a scroll. FS71I 2015-01986 Equestrian Heroes SCNE1 by IMG. Good afternoon, Naruto. Princess Celestia greeted him, her voice filled with not only regal bearing, but warmth that helped develop one of her many titles. All-Mother. For the princess projecting the aura of a matronly figure. Please, come in. It is always lovely to see you. As always, Celestia, it's good to see you too. He greeted, his tone pleasant and his gaze matching it. It was just the two of them now, so there was no need for the formalities or protocol. Celestia stood up from where she sat and began walking towards the blonde. I asked the guards to clear the glass hallway so we could speak there in private, she then added. I hope you do not mind a little stroll. Not at all, I just feel glad I'll finally be able to pay you back for the kindness and generosity you showed me. He said as he glanced to the side and took in his appearance in the mirror. It was something he had spent a great deal having to adjust to when he woke up as a bipedal equine all that time ago. He spent a great deal of effort tuning up this body after all. His arms and legs were more defined with muscles as well as his abs, thanks to all the physical work he had partaken in. The outfit he was currently wearing though had hid most of that. He was only able to do so thanks to Celestia providing him some bits so he could start up a livelihood of sorts in the town he was living in. He was wearing black uniform pants and a dark blue shirt that was made of a slightly inferior material than that of the fine material used by the military. The material came from up north and quite costly, but it was worth it due to the strength of the material and its weather resistance. Not to mention I've always been curious about the story behind those images. Very well, follow me. Celestia smiled. She led Naruto out of the room and together they walked down to the glass hallway. Naruto had only been through the glass hallway once and that was when he had snuck in. It was an evening in May in which his attempts to meet the princess was rebuffed by guards and dismissed as a no-name riffraff and novel at the idea he would have the gall to try and speak with the princess. He assumed his mannerisms and his lack of overpriced clothing and accent made it easy to spot out that he didn't belong. As she led him down the hallway he saw many images. A few of them were rather interesting and he couldn't wait to hear the story behind them. One was of a red-skinned centaur being banished into a pit of sorts. Another was of Celestia and a pink alicorn. That was an interesting term as it was a pony with both wings and horn which Celestia was both blessed with. In comparison to Pegasus's, the princess's wingspan was large and majestic like a swan, not to mention her horn had enough length to it to be comparable to a saber. He was jarred from his thoughts when she began speaking. I will leave you in suspense no longer. I have sent for your presence because I believe only you can help me. Princess Celestia said. I have need for your knowledge. I'm not sure if I'm the best pony to come to for knowledge. Naruto said. When he had been caught by the princess in her study, he decided to be honest and hoped to appeal to her sense of mercy. Prior to his arrival he had heard much about the princess's character and hoped what he had learned about her was true. Revealing that he was not a pony but a human who traveled through dimensions and taking the form of a pony, it was still hard to wrap his head around the ponies of this world and of his old world were considered the same species. Your knowledge in this particular matter is quite unique. Considering your own past, I could trust no one else with such an important task. I need your help in preparation for Nightmare Moon's return. The sound of hoofsteps came to a stop as the princess paused. Those pale magenta eyes settled on the blonde whose eyelid settled slightly and he cradled his elbows. He was contemplating her windows, his soft exhale and slow and subtle body movements betrayed his uneasiness. He had come across reference of her during his research into important and powerful historical artifacts. There were very few mentions or suggestions of something called the elements of harmony which he only learned of thanks to Kage Bunshin. It was the knowledge feedback that the jutsu gifted him being the major factor of why he had even discovered the information, considering he wasn't the most astute student. So she's more than just a myth. Indeed, she answered with a nod. 4 months from now 1,000 years will have passed since I've seen her. Her voice softly trailed off as her face took up an expression of pain, sadness, and regret. On the day of the Summer Sun Festival. He finished as he realized on what day the deity's release fell on. What can I do? He would be of no assistance to her. No matter how much stride he had made in this body he was far from his past level of strength. Maybe if he had his strength from the Fourth War he could assist Celestia, but he was only at the level of strength he achieved before he had fought Nagato. Adjusting to this current body was more difficult than he had hoped when he started to train himself back up again. I am no longer capable of taking on Nightmare Moon. The elements of harmony are the only force capable of stopping her and I'm no longer capable of wielding them. The words she spoke seemed rather measurable, but Naruto chalked it up to it being personal history. So the issue is finding some pony who can. He theorized as Celestia nodded and continued her explanation. There are 6 elements representing harmony itself. Honesty, kindness, loyalty, generosity, laughter, and magic. For the past few years I have taken the pony who I believe is the element of magic, Twilight Sparkle, as my student. Naruto definitely recognized the name as Celestia had mentioned the mare in passing. She had expressed her concerns with the mare's rather antisocial behavior. He had as of yet met Celestia's student as the two would just miss each other in passing. What about the others? Unfortunately that has been a matter that remains unsolved. For the past 2 decades I have been searching from town to town of any possible element candidates, but that has proven unsuccessful, not to mention what knowledge I have on the elements ensured that magic is the spark that ties them together. My attempts to encourage Twilight to make friends have been less than fruitful, and time is running out. There is one last town that has been unchecked and I believe it's possible the candidates are there and if they are it is my hope that Twilight will form a bond with them. Seeing as you are a citizen of Ponyville I theorize that it may be possible you have your own thoughts on possible candidates. There is also the fact that I wish to have a second opinion and that I am merely not imposing my wishes and hopes upon the ponies, not to mention your more familiar relationship with them, so you would give yourself a better insight of their genuine qualities. I see, he simply stated as he went over Celestia's confession. It made sense, after all, if Celestia had spent all this time looking for the other bearers with only Ponyville left for this year's search. Not to mention he would know these ponies on a more personal level, meaning he would know if the pony was simple and truly honest, and not just someone who was honest most of the time. Very well Celestia, I'm more than happy to help you, but say even if I do have some ponies in mind, what happens next? I already have plans to send my protege to help organize the preparations for Ponyville. He nodded as he went over the traits again. Honesty. Laughter. Generosity. Loyalty. Kindness. 5 ponies capable of wielding legendary artifacts, and he would only have a few months to figure them out. I see, and when do I start? Immediately. Celestia informed him. This is of the utmost importance. Princess, I assure you that I'll do everything I can to help you. Ponyville, no, Equestria has become my home now. I will protect it no matter what. Excellent, Celestia responded as her expression turned into one of gratitude. I knew I could depend on you. Let's make preparations immediately. She said as she beckoned the blonde to follow her. Mare was by far among the most normal and stable of ponies when it came to the citizens of the small town of Ponyville. It was why Naruto had approached her not only to see how preparations were going, but in hopes of getting names or a list to which he could use to start finding element candidates. Mare was of course the picture of professionalism, dressed in a suit with a tie a shade darker than the color of her light grayish amber coat. The mare looked about in her early 30s with a nice fit figure with her light gray mane. Though what few others failed to realize was that their mare was not as old as her coloration on her mane and tail would suggest, but the fact she hardly looked a day over 30 had them assume she merely looked young for her age. Either way, the mare was both sharp and reliable, making her some pony one could count on. IMG, FS71I 2015-019 D7 Equestrian Heroes Scene 2 by IMG. The choir will be seated over there, the mayor gestured to the arrangement in the middle of the building. The platform to which they would be using was in the process of being set up. Princess Celestia will be behind the onstage curtain until I introduce her. She further elaborated on, going over the steps she had organized for Her Majesty's arrival. What about the food? Naruto asked her in hopes that the venue would be enjoyable. That and since Celestia had sent him as a liaison of sorts, he would be able to make subtle suggestions of the mayor on which ponies would be the best for certain positions for the celebration. No pony has volunteered to help with the food yet, Mare informed him as she went over the checklist of names on the clipboard she was carrying. There is still a lot to work out with the scheduling of the weather, along with the seating and cleanup the organization will have to handle. Well Mayor, I'll let you know if I happen to find anyone who can volunteer. He stated as he mentally began making a list of ponies who might fit the criteria. He was going to have to go down the list one by one. Cheerly was without a doubt one of the sweetest ponies that Naruto knew. She was also rather cute and had a kind heart. Her fur coloration was one of the more unique shades in the town of Ponyville, with a Sarah's coat and a very pale rose with her mane, a very pale Sarah's mane. Her outfit consisted of a very modest green and orange pattern, ankle-length skirt, simple short-sleeved white buttoned shirt with knee-length socks and flats. Her outfit highlighted a nice figure with nice hips, but she was someone of a more reserved nature, so her look was rather classy. She was one of the ponies that he felt qualified as an element. Naruto knew Cheerly enough that she liked spending her Saturdays in the park reading and taking in the fresh air. Because of the tight-knit nature of the town, it was easy to develop a tight-knit circle of friends. So how have you been, Cheerly? Things have been pleasant as always. How was your trip? Cheerly asked him, curious as to what could have brought the blonde out of town. Interesting, he began as some ponies traveled by and waved. I always enjoy traveling when I can. He managed to dodge the question while bringing the focus on to other subjects. The small talk was of simple things really. Like how their day went and speculation of how the Summer Sun Festival was going to entail. It grew late into the afternoon before Naruto bid her goodbye with promises of getting together for lunch sometime. IMG, FS70I 2015-019 EA Equestrian Heroes Scene 3 by IMG. Naruto concluded the day with a light meal of celery soup, something that took him a long time to adapt to as he compiled the notes he made. Cheerly. A very kind and light-hearted mare that enjoyed teaching children. Friendly and sociable. She was a good candidate for the elements of generosity and kindness, but her talents lie within teaching. The only volunteer work she could conceivably do for the festival was cleanup. Naruto decided to move to the next pony on his list, Ditzy too. Naruto made his way to where Ditzy lived in one of the small houses that bordered near the shopping section of the town. Ponyville wasn't a large town with a population capping at nearly 400 ponies. With Dinky in school and Amethyst at the academy, there was one place where he would find his wide-eyed buddy. So he went along one of the dirt trails towards one of Ponyville's farm. The most important crops that made up a lot of the town's agriculture consisted of apples and carrots. The carrot farm, owned by none other than a mare by the name of Golden Harvest, or known by her closest friends as Carrot Top, thanks to the color of her mane, and that farming carrots was her special talent. The trail to the carrot farm was a nice 1.5-mile hike along one of the trails. He made his way across an intersecting path as Harvest's property came into sight. He eventually made his way to the porch, which was a little worn down with patches of hole in the ground. Behind the tinted windows, one could make out a curtain shielding the inside of the home from prying eyes, with a bug zapper hanging not too far by one of the wooden planks. Naruto gave a knock on the door and called out to Carrot Top. "Coming." A light, almost feathery voice had called out. Opening the door stood the form of Golden Harvest, a carrot-orange mane mare with a slender figure, bright emerald green eyes and pale yellow skin. She was wearing a red top underneath overalls, showing off toned legs cultivated from being a farmer. Like most farmers, there were light calluses on her hands from all the farm work. Though seeing as Harvest was the only one who owned and managed the farm, it was small compared to others that worked in said business. "Hey there, Naruto. How can I help you?" "Hey there, Carrot, have you happened to see Ditzy? She wasn't home, so I thought I'd check here." "No, she's out at the market to restock my fridge since she cleaned it out again," she remarked with a look mixed between a deadpan and a grimace. A light chuckle escaped his lips. Golden invited Naruto into her home as his heavy footsteps creaked against the wooden floorboard. They entered the kitchen, and where Golden was brewing some hot water for coffee. As Naruto looked around, he noticed Carrot had some new wallpaper installed as he continued observing the room. The table was new, no longer would anyone using it and deal with the squeaks thanks to the bad leg. "So why are you looking for Ditzy? Something up?" she wondered as she finished pouring the coffee and went to the counter and began cutting out a slice of cake. "Want some cake?" "No thanks," he kindly refused as he began adding cream and sugar. "Anyway, the reason I've been looking for Ditz is for preparation for the festival coming up. Speaking of which, Carrot, this would be a nice opportunity to get some advertisement for your farm if you volunteer. There's still a spot for a food vendor to set up shop." "Oh, I would really like to do so, but I'm going out of town. I'm visiting my grandma for her birthday, but you could always try the apples," she suggested before she turned her body sideways in the chair to steal a glance behind Naruto to check the time on the grandfather clock in the hall. "Now where is that mare?" she murmured to herself. "You know, after all this time you never brought it up and I've been curious. How did you and Ditzy meet and become friends?" Besides Carrot Top, he was the only other pony that could be called Ditzy's friend. One would probably argue Pinkie Pie with her help on making a friend of everyone, but the eternally happy and bouncy mare would be better classified as a casual acquaintance. IMG, FS71I 2015-0197 halves Equestrian Heroes Scene 4 by IMG. Well, it's a bit of a long story. One day I was minding my business when Ditzy all of a sudden crashed through the roof of my living. Scared the living Tartarus out of me. A pleasant smile graced her lips. You know how she is, with that smile of hers, greeting me hello without much consideration on just what happened to her. She was about to leave when I noticed she had badly sprained her wing. I had to stop her and practically forced her on my couch. Golden continued her tale as she had insisted on delivering Ditzy's package, knowing a road to Huffington through an abandoned path in the Everfree forest. That was when I met this giant rabbit creature. I was so scared at first, but it turned out he was kind friendly. I had managed to come across his garden after being frightened by the giant serpent. She had gone on to explain how she had enlisted the creature's help to finish delivering package. By the time I finally got back, Ditzy was lounging on my couch with all my food on the table, and you know what she told me? "I emptied out your fridge, and the worst part is she somehow always managed to get past the locks I put on it," she finished with a cute pout. After their conversation, Naruto filed Golden's name away as the possible element of generosity. "Carrot." A low, almost coltish voice called out before the sound of crashing echoed. "I'm okay." Naruto and Carrot went up and helped the mare up. "Hi, Naruto," she happily greeted. "Hey there, Ditzy," he greeted the mare. Ditzy by far would be considered one of the most attractive mares if you changed a few things about her, but those quirks made her who she was, and he wouldn't change a thing about her. Ditzy's voice suited the mare regardless of what others would say. There was a sort of charm to the brashness in her voice. Its other features included being a few inches taller than 5 feet tall. Her coat coloring was that of bluish-gray coat, along with pale light grayish-yellow mane and tail, along with a pair of Pegasus wings. While Earth ponies were known for their strong bodies and connection with nature, usually resulting in them being the physically strongest and largest of ponies, Pegasus were known for their light bodies and lithe form. Ditzy's form was a bit more on the thick side with normal legs, slight pudgy, but wide hips and a nice chest. The general area of her haunches though was her best features, large and spacious like a blown-up bubble. She was wearing grey sleeveless dress that came down to her thighs with white splotches, with a pair of block boy shorts underneath. The one feature of Ditzy that made her stood out prominently among most of the citizens was the fact she was crossed-eyed, which mixed in with her infamous clumsiness and her simple nature earned her a lot of ire and bullying through much of her childhood. As a result, she had few friends, as most ponies avoided the mare because of the unfortunate bad luck that tends to occur when Ditzy popped up. Considering his own lonely childhood, Naruto had bonded with Ditzy almost instantly. The muffin-loving male mare he personally felt qualified as the element of kindness, but he needed to do some more research. After helping Ditzy put away the groceries and talking a bit more, to which Ditzy happily volunteered to help clean up after the summer festival, bid them farewell, promising to come to the party Ditzy was planning for her oldest amethyst star when she graduated from Celestia's school for gifted unicorns. Naruto took a brief glance at the criteria Celestia had given him. A bond between the bearers was important. As generosity and Ditzy as kindness would fit 2 out of 5 of the ponies, but there was the problem of the fact Ditzy had no ties to the others. If the elements of harmony were to be a united force, then they were going to need a connection. After bidding goodbye to the 2 mares, he made his way home. Remembering Carrot Top's statement, Naruto decided to go pay a visit to Applejack tomorrow. Naruto made his way to his current place of residence. A large 2-story building with lavish trends and with a theme one would instantly mistake as circus theme. The colors of the building consisted of cerulean, golden, diamond and silver shades for a good deal of its outline, with pink and other shades of violets, using for such things as the curtain and horse mannequins' outfits. Columns of intersecting colors of gold and mulberry made up the solid infrastructure of the building. The crystal-like clear glasses and an orange flag on top a red-shaped heart was one of the emblems above the golden horse-shaped emblem above the home adorned with pink and violet hearts. This building made up Naruto's place of residence a few weeks after he arrived to Ponyville. The good deal of his money he earned doing odd jobs here and there across Ponyville, seeing as his explanation for his mark didn't translate well into a working career. "Rarity, I'm home," Naruto called out as he walked further into the building. While the other homes were a bit more on the rustic side, Rarity's home was more fitting of a place one would expect from Canterlot. The rooms had a small collection of elaborate paintings hang from the walls, and the fresh scent of flowers floats buoyantly throughout the rooms, with the windows covered by a pair of dark red curtains, allowing no more than a sliver of the sun's rays to filter into any room at a simple time. "Bienvenue à la maison, Naruto," a voice called out in a language known as French. His roommate/boss/friend was rather well known for her classiness and the fact she followed nearly all things trendy. By far she was one of the most attractive women Naruto had ever seen, and one of the few to initially got a reaction out of Naruto during his adjustment phase. Dark nylon stockings tightly gripped against her long, slender legs, a black business skirt up against her shapely hips that swayed this way and that with an almost practiced grace about them, and to top it off, a sleeveless white blouse showing just enough of her ample cleavage. Her fur was soft-looking and white as snow, with a faint smell of perfumes and other productive, radiating off the model-like mare, who had a hand rested on her well-defined hip. Rarity, out of all the mares he knew, worked on not only being ladylike, but also worked to keep up his figure. Rarity's form was the result of a combination of good genes and of conditioning that of the usual unicorn mare didn't achieve without either hardcore physical dedication or body alteration magic. Of the 3 pony times, unicorns were often the most average in body size and least physically inclined of the tribes, seeing as their magic had them do the least physical labor of the 3 tribes. As a result, it often left them with the weakest bodies of the 3, having to rely on their magic to make up the difference. She greeted the blonde with a friendly hug, dark lavender hair framing around her stunningly beautiful face in a stylized coiffure as it was called. FS 71I 2015-019F0 Equestrian Heroes Scene 5 by IMG. "Hello to you too, Rarity, enjoy having your home to yourself while I was gone," he lightly teased. "Well, it was definitely quiet," she replied to his teasing with a wry quip. "Did you enjoy your trip?" "Yeah, indeed, I really didn't have much time for pleasure. It was more of a business trip than anything," he answered as Rarity nodded. She then beckons him to the kitchen so she could continue asking him questions. Rarity was without a very kind hostess and great friend. Upon really thinking about it, Rarity was a more than ideal candidate for the element of generosity. Only problem was she had no connection to Ditzy or Carrot Top. He went over his thoughts again, with Ditzy and Cheerily for kindness, with Rarity and Golden for generosity. He decided to see if he could find some of the other elements tomorrow to help narrow down his choices. That morning Naruto woke up to the smell of breakfast. That was a smell he always welcomed as he got washed up and dressed for the day. He entered the kitchen and there waiting for him was pancakes, eggs, along with a bowl of fruit. Rarity as always had a light meal of fruit and toast with a bowl of oatmeal. Per usual, they would finish their meal before they began to talk. As usual, Rarity's mane was in its usual updo, her outfit lint-free and freshly ironed. There was definitely a perfectionist's mentality to the way she did things. Rarity once again expressed her interest in Naruto's trip, to which he gave her an edited version of the details. One of the main things that still needs doing is to find some volunteers to help decorate town hall and the area around it. The thing is, the money for the decorations will be costly. Why, I see how that would pose a problem. Rarity paused as she began thinking about an idea that could help solve this problem. Suddenly her eyes slightly widened and her face later lit up as a thought came to her mind. Idea. Rarity sang out the word in a cheerful little melody. I have plenty of old threads and other decorations in my workroom. I would be more than happy to not only give them, in fact I would be more than happy to volunteer my services for the festival. That's very kind of you, Rarity. Finding someone for decorations was one of the biggest concerns, and I'm sure the mayor will be glad to hear you'll be the one handling it. As a seamstress, Rarity knew a great deal about designs, colors, and anything within those fields. If there was a pony who you would count on for decoration, then it was someone whose field was similar to that. Naruto was now more than sure that Rarity was the element of generosity. Since today seemed to be a slow day, Rarity didn't have many tasks for Naruto, so he carried on and made his way to Sweet Apple Acres. The apple farm was by far larger than Carrot Top's farm. The apples not only harvested and sold apples, but also took care of livestock. The workers consisted of Applejack and Big Macintosh, with Granny Apple as the elder that oversaw the business side of things. Also, cute little Apple Bloom also lived on the farm, occasionally helping out on the farm. Many of the Apple clan were located throughout Equestria, with their relatives going into the hundreds. The apples were among his closest friends, in fact he owed his life to Applejack and Big Macintosh. Naruto took a glance at the porch where the apple green Granny Smith Apple would often spend her time rocking peacefully in her chair. That infamous squeak with each forward tilt that accompanied the rocking motions was one that would enter the mind and never leave. He continued searching around for hide or hair of the other apples. He knew around this time Apple Bloom would be in school, which meant AJ and Mac were working the farm. Finally he came across the form of Big Mac carrying a large bale of hay with one arm. In terms of raw physical strength, there wasn't a pony in Ponyville that could beat Big Mac. He was second to none in terms of endurance either. He was tall enough to loom over most ponies, he was easily 7 feet tall. His complexion was that of a deep brilliant amaranth. Naruto would soon come to learn that knowing shades of color was a very important part of equine culture, because they, along with features or talents, played the role that names would have in identifying your ancestral heritage. Anyway, he hands down was one of the hardest working ponies in Ponyville. His red flannel shirt seared at the ends and stained with sweat. It clung to his torso, accentuating his broad and muscular chest and pectorals. Despite lacking any formal training, Big Mac's body was well defined from all the farm work, leading to him developing a muscular and attractive body. It was further highlighted by the holes in his jeans that showed off hints of his muscular legs. His brilliant orange mane and sap green eyes completed his farm boy look. His rather quiet and reserved nature, along with his respectful demeanor, earned him more admirers than the average stallion. It would be unfounded to say at least a third of the mares, if not more of the mares, of Ponyville either fancied or were attracted to Big Mac. But seeing as Ponyville was one of the most heavily mare-populated settlements in the pony community, that made the choices rather selective, seeing as the mare population heavily outnumbered the stallion population 5 to 1. As such, it wasn't an uncommon practice for those in certain communities to have members that formed herds. Hey there, Mac. Naruto greeted the worker as he adjusted his stride to match his own. Howdy. He grunted out without breaking his stride to continue collecting the hay. I was wondering if the apples have any plan for the Summer Sun Festival coming up, because food preparations needs figuring out since there haven't been any volunteers. I wouldn't be able to help you preparing for the reunion, but I reckon Applejack would be able to aid you. He said as he placed a hay block into the pike with the rest of them before grabbing the wagon stationed by the entrance and began dragging it outside. Is Applejack on the farm anywhere? He wondered as he watched Big Mac placed buckets in the wagon that was often used to carry apples bucked from the trees. She's in town sellin'. He answered as he finished stacking all the buckets in the cart. Thanks, Mac. Called out with a wave as he began his journey anew back into town to find the other farm pony. The blonde made his way to Ponyville's market center, the one place where one could find it all when it came to the ingredients for your meal, and where haggling skills meant the difference between a nice meal or a nice little feast with spending money for tomorrow. Are you serious? Only 3 bits? A shocked voice asked as Naruto continued to weave around the crowd of ponies. Yes indeed, a voice spoke with a strong and familiar southern drawl. Wow, back in my old town apples were 15 bits an apple. Naruto finally came upon the scene to see a cobalt blue gentleman in his late 30s with short and neatly groomed jet black mane was purchasing from Applejack. He was wearing a dress pants and suit combo with small square rimmed glasses with his eye color, a dull sort of gold. The voice he had been definitely younger than his voice indicated. The Earth Pony stallion picked up the barrel of apples and went on his way. "Yo AJ," Naruto called out to the Earth Pony. The mare in question was behind a stall selling apples. She was slightly taller than him, not to mention she was physically developed like her brother from all the farm work, but more in a feminine shape. She had pale light olive coloring for her mane, with the same sap green eyes that all the apples on Sweet Apple Acres had, along with a light dusting of freckles on her face. Her coating was that of a light brilliant gambage colored marred from the sweating and hard work, not to mention there were scratches and cut on her face and body from either farming accidents or creatures that would occasionally wander in from the everfree forest. All in all, Applejack was a country girl, seeing as her outfit consisted of a red and white checkered tie-up shirt with a chest that easily rivaled Rarity's generous bosom. The Daisy Duke she was wearing showed off her legs thick with muscle, a defining trait of an Earth Pony. Earth Ponies, famed for strength and endurance, were often the largest of the three pony tribes. It was also thanks to this conditioning that gave her a firm and noticeably round bottom and svelte waist that it initially gained the apple farmer a lot of admirers, but a few factors led to that thinning over time. Applejack would only be courted by a strong and honest stallion with a worthy work ethic, and considering the apples seemed to have unusual strength even by Earth Pony standards and stubborn adherence to their ethics, that meant many stallions fell short of her standards. Despite this, the apples still had plenty of admirers who still tried to cut corners in their attempt to woo her. In a way, it actually reminded him of Rarity's own fan base of admirers enamored by her beauty, but unfortunately for them, Rarity's standards were even higher by far. By the time he had gotten over there, the mare had readjusted the Stetson hat on her head. "Well, ain't you a sight for sore eyes? How's your boss lady treating you? Surprised she let you out of the shop." Now Applejack, if you take the time to get to know Rarity, you'll see she's a perfectly nice mare. He knew that Applejack's experience with the high life during that time she spent with her uncle and Aunt Orange colored her perception of the high class. So that last customer seemed pretty happy. He said, pointing his thumb in the same direction AJ's previous customer went. "Well, that feller was telling me how they were gouging the prices in the last town he and his wife lived in. I know of the regions and apples ain't that rare, you know. He was trying to buy my apples for way over price and I couldn't, in good conscience, do that to the poor feller." She finished with a slight sigh. To be honest, money was always a touch and go subject at Sweet Apple Acres. Especially considering that Granny Apple was getting on up there in years, meaning that medical emergencies were another thing to be factored into their budget, and with the growing repairs to the farm, thanks to some of the creatures in the Everfree venturing near town now more than ever. Naruto's face softened at this. "That was incredibly honest of you, Applejack." "Why, thank ya, Sugar Cube." Applejack replies to your comment before she frowns a little. "But I'm afraid that I may have to start bumping up the prices if the sales don't pick up." Naruto then remembered why he was looking for her. "Actually, Applejack, that reminds me of something. I was wondering if you would be willing to cater for the Summer Sun Festival." Initially there was only going to be enough of the budget to order the decorations, but since Rarity offered to decorate Town Hall for free, I could probably convince the mayor to use enough of the budget to cover the food bill. This could also be some nice advertisement to Sweet Apple Acres for the ponies who are going to come for the festival. "Sounds like a mighty fine idea, Tommy. Heck, Mac is handling the planning for the reunion, so why not? I'm sure there should be plenty of the family who'd be more than happy to help out. Count me in. This is turning out easier than I would expect. The mayor will be pleased," he said as he placed down a bit to buy some apples. "Why, thank ya kindly, partner." Applejack smiles as she scoops up at his bits. In a matter of seconds she handed him the apples. "I'm afraid I have to leave now to find any more volunteers for the festival. I'll be seeing you, AJ." The cowpony nods. "Yep, you too, Naruto." Naruto continued his way through the busy market streets. Next thing he knew, a pink blur appeared out of nowhere and slams into him hard, making his back kiss the pavement. It took him a moment to recollect himself when he felt a very soft, warm and heavy body press itself against his, as two very immense and cushioned pillows lay against his chest. What's more, his nose could smell the odd aroma of cotton candy and cake frosting. "Hi, Pinkie Pie," he greeted without missing a beat. "Gotcha," she replied with a giggle. "You're slipping up, mister. You didn't even sense me this time." He was so caught up in his mission he had completely forgotten about the little game between him and Pinkie. Alright, you got me, can you let me up now?" Those violet orbs of hers were so full of mirth and innocence, it was hard to stay mad at her. Of the other mares Naruto had gotten to know so far, Pinkie was on the shorter side with her skin a brilliant rose shade and her mane and tail a raspberry shade. Unlike the other ponies, Pinkie's mane and tail was that of an unconventional puffy style reminiscent of cotton candy. Like the others, Pinkie also had a desirable shape, but more unique to her energetic nature. She was shorter and far less muscled than other Earth ponies to the point many a pony or two wondered if she was lazy, but those who knew Pinkie knew there was nearly no shortage to her energy. Also with a figure like that, lazy was not the word one would use. She had a nice chest for one, perky and a good deal larger than the average pair, giving her a popularity similar to that of Rarity and Applejack. One would think with all her snacking habit of candy and cake that Pinkie would be pudgy, but that was anything but the case. Her stomach was nice and flat with a remarkable waistline, which in itself was a mystery, was Pinkie didn't exercise fanatically or worked out like most would, but that didn't stop her from having a more hergless shape from the waist down. No, all that sugar did in fact went somewhere, and it was that plump ass of hers along with her meaty thighs. If Pinkie hadn't been known as something of a loon about town, she would probably have just as many admirers if not more so than a lot of the other mares. Unfortunately, her highly energetic and sometimes over-friendly demeanor made her off-putting to a lot of ponies. Her outfit consisted of a white t-shirt with the words "Party Girl" bold in gold stopping short of her midriff, along with a pair of form-fitting blue jeans. A stark contrast to her usual yellow skirt or shorts she would have usually worn on her days off. Naruto, unaware that he was starting quite attentively at Pinkie, wondered why he didn't think about asking for her health. Looks like someone likes what he sees. Pinkie teased mischievously as a smirk formed on her face, very much amused by the embarrassment forming on Naruto's face. "Pinkie," Naruto mumbled with an embarrassed blush. He still hadn't quite fully worked out his own thoughts and feelings about the situation. He would be blind not to notice how attractive the mares he associated with are, they were very much like humans, and it was those similar features that helped Naruto better adapt to this society, but he was still adapting and getting used to being a pony, so when it came to romance, it was one of the things he had on the back burner. "So, did you enjoy checking me out?" she teased, earning an annoyed sigh from the blonde. With someone who didn't have much dating experience, she sure was an expert at teasing him. She and Rainbow Dash had that much in common at least. "Yes, actually, feels like someone might need to go bra shopping soon." He shot back in hopes of embarrassing her, but instead she reacted in typical Pinkie Pie fashion. "You really think so?" she asked, groping her breasts and began fondling them with up and down motions. Naruto's blush intensified. Only Pinkie Pie could turn his pranks and verbal jabs back on him. Then again, it was one of the things he liked best about her. She was a completely honest and sweet mare that saw the best in everything. She was the element of laughter bar none. He didn't even really have to think about who'd he pick for that one if he was honest. "Hey Pinkie, who do you think is the most loyal pony in town?" he wondered as he began to notice a trend in his choices. Pinkie pulled out what she called her thinking cap, which was essentially a mini graduate's hat, and began thinking. "Well, there's the apples who are very loyal to their family, oh and Shirley, she's so nice, always doing her best to educate the little colts and fillies, and there's Mare, who's always doing her best for the town. And the cakes, they're super nice and awesome and always dedicated to each other, and Shoeshine always take time to listen to those she cares about, and noteworthy is." "Pinkie, calm down." He forcibly placed his hand over the mare's mouth. "Pinks," he called out as she insisted on talking through his hand. She titled her head quizzically and finally stopped talking. "Who do you think among everyone that, no matter what, values being loyal to all else? Can you remember anyone making a major decision to stand by someone else?" After he asked that, Pinkie immediately began talking, to which he had to remove his hand. "Here, so she could stay here with Fluttershy because Fluttershy is so sweet but really sensitive and—" "Wait, start again. Who are we talking about?" he asked. She looked at him as if he just told her a bad joke. "What do you mean? Rainbow Dash, silly, don't you remember?" Naruto literally face-palmed at the fact he didn't realize this himself. Of course, without Pinkie's help it would have probably taken him weeks to realize this, seeing as loyalty was one of the hardest traits to figure out or test. Unlike generosity, kindness, or honesty, you couldn't easily test or see that being exhibited as an everyday trait. Loyalty itself was something one could only show during a major event or decision for it to truly be any test of that characteristic. Rainbow Dash was one of the first ponies he had met, who he owed his life to, and as time went on he got to know a great deal about her. She was close to the Pegasus known as Fluttershy, who was truer to her name than most. In fact, Rainbow Dash moving to Ponyville was a result of being close to Fluttershy, one of the only two friends Rainbow Dash had made at the academy, with her being Fluttershy's only friend. Considering Rainbow Dash's own dream, one would think she would have a better chance at achieving it by staying in Cloudsdales, but her concern for the other Pegasus saw her move to this very town. "Thanks, Pie." Naruto scooped the mare into an energetic hug, causing her to let out a little yelp in joy. He was almost sure now. Generosity equals Rarity. Loyalty equals Rainbow Dash. Laughter equals Pinkie Pie. Honesty equals Applejack. Kindness equals. In fact, even if the mares minimally knew each other, it was better than his alternative choices. Seeing as Rainbow Dash spent most days either working or snoozing, she didn't socialize unless it was to buy groceries or find out what was going on in town. Pinkie Pie knew all of them because of her nature, and once in a while Applejack surely had sold her apples to the other mares. At best they would be casual acquaintances with Ditzy when she delivered their mail, and only Applejack and Rarity would have had any contact with Shirley due to their younger siblings being in her class. If one would really think about it, who else in Ponyville would really fit the trait of kindness other than Fluttershy? She was extremely soft-spoken and loving with her talent of taking care of animals. He couldn't think of a kinder talent than working in the medical field. He decided he was going to pay Fluttershy a visit tomorrow and see if she was willing to volunteer for the festival. He didn't even need to ask Pinkie Pie, as the moment she saw Twilight in the town she was going to insist on throwing her a party. Everything was coming along, he would just need to send the princess a letter on his thoughts on who the 5 elements were. A bright light illuminated the dark halls of the archives. The mare who gave off the faint glow of light was staring intently at the bookshelves. She was young, around 20, and just by looking at the pale complexion of her fur, it was obvious that she didn't get outside very much. Her moderate violet eyes continued to examine the endless volumes before her. Her mane was that of a very adorable sapphire blue mane cut with straight bangs, with 2 streaks of purple and rose running through it. A horn protruded from the mane. Her outfit consisted of a white button-up uniform shirt with a lavender sweater vest over it. The formal outfit fit nicely over her bust. Completing the outfit was a violet plaid uniform skirt that reached below her knees. The outfit served the purpose of simple student wear instead of highlighting the loveliness of her features. "Spike," she called out, her voice echoing through the room. "Spike, have you had any luck?" "I found 5 bits." A young boy's voice called out. "If that's not luck, I have no idea what is." "Spike, have you had any luck finding the book?" The mare started again. "Oh, right. The book. No, nothing yet, Twilight," Spike answered back as he re-entered the room. He was an adolescent boy in appearance with olive gray coloring going down from the top of his chest and down his body, hidden by the purple button-up shirt he was wearing. What couldn't be hidden by the shirt or jeans was his mulberry scaly outside that extended from the back part of his body trailing around his neck, and what compromised his face as well. With his moderate pistachio eyes compromised of slits, pale green spines and mulberry scales, this creature was without a doubt a young dragon. "What was the name of the book again?" he awkwardly asked as he scratched his cheek. Twilight's head dipped back as she had to repress the urge to groan and smack her forehead against the bookcase. As luck would it, her eyes scanned the title of the book in front of her, and with glee, she hastily took it from its confined. This was exactly what she was looking for. "Remind me why we're spending a weekend looking up a moldy old book that no one probably even remembers exists?" Spike sullenly asked, leaning against one of the bookcases. Twilight ignored him, gently holding the book in her hands as her eyes rapidly scanned the pages of the tome's content. After several fruitless minutes of reading, Twilight came upon a page where the words were legible. She grinned. "I found it," she announced. "The Nightmare's Return." "What's so important about this prophecy again?" Spike asked. "Just listen to it. Legend has it that on the longest day of the 1000th year, the stars will aid in her escape and she will bring about nighttime eternal." Twilight straightened with a gasp. "Spike, do you know what this means?" "No," he answered. "Never mind," Twilight shook her head. "It doesn't matter. What's important is that we get this information to the princess immediately. Spike, take a letter." "Why do we have to do this now?" Spike whined. "Don't you remember what happened last year during the last winter solstice?" she asked as Spike shot her a quizzical look, showing that he indeed did not remember what she was referencing. "For the following decade, the stars have been suddenly drawing closer to the moon in behavior in stark contrast to any pre-recorded data or behavior." Spike. "Now does it make sense?" Spike stared at her. He shook his head. "You're impossible, you know." Twilight asked as she resisted the urge to face palm. "I know. You said you wanted me to write a letter." Spike reminded her. "Oh, right," Twilight said. Spike hiccuped out a burst of green flames, and a scroll of parchment and a quill fell into his claws. Ahem. "Dear Princess Celestia. Dear Princess Celestia. My recent studies into the old Equestria folklore have led me to conclude that we are on the precipice of disaster," Twilight dictated to her assistant. "For you see, the mythical mare in the moon is in fact Nightmare Moon, and she is about to return to Equestria and bring with her eternal night." Twilight continued to dictate. As she paced about, "Something must be done to make sure this terrible prophecy does not come true. I await your quick response, your faithful student Twilight Sparkle." "Ours." Twilight Sparkly. Spike finished writing. "Got it. Great. Send it. Now?" "Of course." "I don't know, Twilight. Princess Celestia's a little busy getting ready for the Summer Sun Festival, and it's, like, the day after tomorrow." Twilight came over to Spike and went face to face with him. "That's just it, Spike." She then straightened up, looking to the sun. "The day after tomorrow is the 1000th year of the summer sun celebration. It's imperative that the princess is told right away." Spike took a deep breath, held the rolled parchment in front of his mouth, and blew a burst of green fire over it. The message burned away, leaving only a tendril of sparkling pink smoke that snaked out a high window. "There. It's on its way. But I wouldn't hold your breath." "Oh, I'm not worried, Spike." Twilight replied in a smug tone. "The princess trusts me completely. In all the years she's been my mentor, she's never once doubted me." Suddenly, Spike's cheeks bulged as if he was about to vomit. Instead, he belched up a burst of green fire that formed into a sealed scroll, which dropped to the floor. "I knew she would want to take immediate action," she said as Twilight scooped up the scroll. "I'm me dearest, most faithful student Twilight, you know that I value your diligence and that I trust you completely. But there is more to life than reading old tomes. Get out and enjoy yourself some more. I assure you that you will. There is more to life than reading dusty old tomes." Twilight gasped as that sentence seemed to hit her hard. I. Seeing this, Spike looked over and continued reading it. "There is more to a young pony's life than studying. So I'm sending you to supervise the preparations for the summer sun celebration in this year's location, Ponyville." It took Twilight a minute to get over the shock before she began packing her saddlebag. If the princess wanted her to oversee the celebrations, then she wasn't going to let her down. She exited the archives and began making her way to her room to pack. "There you are, Twilight," a voice had called. Twilight turned to see it was some of her classmates from Celestia's school of gifted unicorns. The first of the mares had an ivory coat with light curly pink mane and tail with electric blue eyes. She was wearing a wispy black V-neck top and jeans low enough to give off a glimpse of her cute mark, 3 sparkly blue stars. Next to her was Minuet, the tallest of the 3 unicorns. Her complexion was that of a Maya blue coat, periwinkle mane and tail with a pigment blue streak and steel blue eyes. She was wearing a blue plaid shirt with a jean skirt. The last of them was Lemon Heart's appearance consisted of a plain yellow coat, a cerulean mane and tail with a lighter tail streak, raspberry red eyes, and a cute mark of 3 hearts, 2 light blue and 1 light green, that peeked out from the miniskirt she was wearing. All 3 of the unicorn mares had the typical unicorn body shape with varying differences. Minuet was tall and on the leggy side while being the leggiest of the 3. Lemon Heart's was the shortest, but with nice hips, and her mane hanged the lowest with 2 curls on the side of her shoulders. Twinkle by far had the largest chest of the trio and was the most outgoing with a charming smile and a more outgoing demeanor, in contrast to Lemon's easygoing nature and Minuet's more quiet and reserved nature. "I trust you heard Moondancer is having a little get-together in the West Castle courtyard," explained Twinkle. "You want to come?" Twilight recoiled a bit and then said, "Oh, sorry, girls, I have something important I have to attend to," she said as she galloped off. Twinkle sighed in disgust. "Does that pony do anything except study? I think she's more interested in books than friends." The 3 of them then went on their way. Hours. So long. She had waited so long. It wouldn't be long now. Just a few hours and Equestrian, all of Equestria would be hers. For the first few hundred years, rage fueled her relentless determination to break free from the moon. When that had failed, she simply sat in silence and contemplated her moves. That was when they came, her minions from the shadows. The nightmare forces. That was when she truly began to form ideas. Planning for the day. Planning her rule. Planning on what she had in mind for Celestia. The power of the elements, as great as they were, could not be fueled by the effects of one individual, even one as mighty as Celestia. No, harmony, after all, could not be maintained by one existence. As she struggled and fought against the magic's pulls, remnants of her will and magic slipped through the cracks. As such, the once pleasant dreams or sleep of many creatures began a terrifying and dark presence that would impress upon their dreams. Hush whispers would spread along with the fear memories of a creature that would plague the dreams of those touched by darkness. These dreadful experiences that would drive those to tears or the brink of madness would soon earn the name of nightmares. These nightmares consisted of many things, but there was one thing that was consistent about many of them throughout the years. That of a wicked and dark coat mare, the manifestation of nightmares itself having resulted in many folklore about the mare from the moon. The folklore so strong it had become a holiday of sorts and a story to frighten misbehaving fowls. Those who sought the power that the folklore promised or those dissatisfied with Celestia's rule soon found themselves in these nightmares face to face with the infamous mare. Those touched by darkness would make up her army for the incoming takeover of the planet. She would be ready. Equestria would be hers. Ours. Each breath came out as a frosty hue as he carried forward. Naruto could feel his energy dropping at each step was a struggle not to stop. His feet crushed dead leaves and twigs that littered his path. This area was filled with dying plant life. His exotic yellow hair swayed slightly in the breeze, his body marred with blood and his neck covered in bruises. There was long, razor-like scratches littered across his black and orange tattered clothing. No matter the pain that was coursing through him, he couldn't let that thing win. He felt the air grow colder. Far behind, an exhausted Naruto walked a few more steps. So this is what it feels like. He had heard people often complained about him having too much energy, but it looked like in this one situation it was failing him. Taking another step, he promptly collapsed in exhaustion. Naruto took another step, almost losing his balance and falling over. Shadowfright was drawing closer, he could sense it. He could feel the darkness creeping up on him. He was here. He turned around and stood his ground. He would fight until the bitter end. Shadowfright rose from the darkness, forming a looming humanoid figure with avian features. His movements were fluid, like a liquid, and his very speech was that of a groan. End of the line. The nightmare will consume everything. Not as long as there is breath in this body. Naruto remarked as a sphere of light erupted from his chest. Both of them charged forward, ready to destroy their longtime foe at long last. He jolted awake with a heaving breath and slackened form. His steps were awkward as he stumbled in the darkness. Reaching out, he pulled the light switch as he looked at himself in the mirror. The same familiar image he had for a year now, a body covered in orange fur that covered his form, with the exception of his hair, referred to his mane and his tail. They were both a bright brilliant yellow that was the same as his hair. Though that wasn't the only feature that stayed the same, he at least still had his cerulean blue eyes. It had been nearly a year since he woke up in this strange new world. He got dressed, putting on a pair of black jeans that he was once more starting to outgrow, which he would need to go to Rarity's for adjustment. The blonde had finally saved up money to buy his own place and moved a couple of weeks ago. While he was a little sad to move out, having gotten used to Rarity's presence in the morning, he knew he couldn't take up her guest room forever. He threw on a white button-up shirt. No sense putting on anything too nice, all things considering today. His thoughts continued to plague him as he continued down the street. In a blur, Pinkie shot out a series of words before continuing her quickened pace. He caught the words new pony and party in the verbal speed blur. Of course, the reason for that was what happened 20 minutes ago. A chariot passed through some clouds as the two passengers looked on. Ahead was a pleasant-looking small town of wood-frame thatched roof buildings bordered by a stream and mountain. The two Pegasi pulling it were muscular and covered in golden armor. They had two-tone blue tails and matching crests on their helmets. While Spike felt relieved that he was gonna have a change of scenery. Twilight, however, was clearly not enthused over this job. And I have an even more essential task for you to complete: make some friends. The purple unicorn hung her head over the side with a soft moan as Spike turned to her. Look on the bright side, Twilight. The princess arranged for you to stay in the library. Doesn't that make you happy? There was a long pause. Finally, she brightened suddenly. Yes, it does. You know why? Because I'm right. I'll check on the preparations as fast as I can, then get to the library to find some proof of Nightmare Moon's return. Then when will you make friends like the princess said? The chariot began to descend as some of the populace watched them land. She said to check on preparations. I am her student and I'll do my royal duty, but the fate of Equestria does not rest on me making friends. They had come to a stop and Twilight used her magic to levitate her things off the chariot. Thank you, sirs. Twilight said to them as she and Spike cleared way for them to take off. As the Pegasi smiled and huffed in response, the two gathered together as they noticed a pink earth pony walk their way. Maybe the ponies in Ponyville have interesting things to talk about, commented Spike as the pony stopped in front of the duo and regarded them with narrowed medium blue eyes and a smile. Come on, Twilight, just try. But uncertainly, Twilight managed to speak up. Hello. The pink one responded with a massive gasp of pure surprise, a leap that left her briefly suspended in midair, and then she suddenly dashed off midair, nearly blowing the unicorn's mane and tail off. Well, that was interesting, all right. As expected, the town was far more lively than usual, seeing as everyone was preparing for the Summer Sun Festival. I'm sorry, he immediately apologized as he quickly scooped up the checklist the unicorn was holding. After a quick glance over, Naruto recognized Twilight from the description that Celestia had given her. It's okay, no harm done. The unicorn replied. Naruto took a step back and took notice of her companion. Without a doubt he was a baby lizard, most likely a dragon considering his features. Welcome to Ponyville, my name is Naruto and it's nice to meet you. I haven't seen you around before, so am I wrong to assume you're new to town? Indeed I am. My name is Twilight Sparkle and this is my assistant. The name's Spike. The rather chipper dragon cut in. And we've come supervise preparations for the Summer Sun Festival. I hope I'm not being rude, but we're really busy. I have to find my way to Sweet Apple Acres to check on how the food preparations are going. Twilight didn't mean to brush off the pony, but the sooner this was done the sooner she could look into stopping Nightmare Moon. I can help you with that, Naruto eagerly volunteered. I know most of the places in town and I'd be happy to help. He volunteered. He watched as a look of uncertainty crossed over the unicorn's face. I wouldn't want to impose. The unicorn kindly responded. While she didn't mind his offer, she really didn't want any distractions while preparing for Nightmare Moon's return. Despite Celestia rebuffing Twilight's warning, the unicorn was not willing to let her findings go. It would be no problem at all. He had insisted with a kind smile. Come on Twilight, what's the harm? Spike insisted, garnering the unicorn's attention. Besides, won't we get things done faster with a guide? Twilight realized she couldn't argue with the logic. The sooner they went to the locations and assessed that all the food and items for the festival were ready, the sooner Twilight could go and prepare for Nightmare Moon's return. Alright Naruto, looks like I'll be taking you up on your offer. The first stop on our list is Sweet Apple Acres. Naruto nodded, and with a suggestion of right this way the trio went on their way to the apple farm. To start off the tour, Naruto began leading Twilight and Spike through the trail that led towards Ponyville farmlands. They traveled down a dirt path enshrouded by tall trees with rays of sunlight peering through the leaves of the birch and oak trees. Many of the trees had been planted the last few years to add some decoration of the winding paths that made up the community. The two of you are going to love Sweet Apple Acres. The apples are famed in these parts for their various apple recipes. Members of their ancestry pioneered the creation of many famous apple recipes, not to mention they handle many of the local exports, such as wool and milk. Naruto informed them as they approached the farm. The walk to the orchard had raised Spike's spirits, the little dragon enjoying the view offered was new to his, and from his small date bag, the checklist Twilight had put together. They passed under a sign that announced they were entering Sweet Apple Acres. Towering apple trees lined the road on both sides, ripe apples hung from almost every tree, a showpiece of the farmer's dedication and how healthy the orchard really was. Spike taking his turn to speak up again, reading from the checklist once more. Summer Sun Festival Official Overseer's Checklist. Number 1, Banquet Preparations. Sweet Apple Acres. A loud yee-haw could be heard along with the sound of dropping apples. They were soon approached by none other than Applejack. Hey there Sugarcube, she greeted Naruto with a warm welcoming smile. Thought you weren't joining us till later. Hey there AJ, I had to adjust my plan a bit seeing as we have some newcomers in town and I volunteered to tour them around town. Naruto answered as he stepped aside to reveal the newcomers. Twilight stepped forward and began to formally introduce herself. She couldn't help but be a bit startled by how noticeably taller and large the other mare was. With the exception of the guards and Celestia, it was uncommon for her to see other ponies of this size. Then again, Canterlot was a city where the majority of the population comprised of unicorns, so she hadn't met many earth ponies or Pegasi to make a comparison. Hello, my name is Twilight Sparkle, and she was suddenly cut off in the middle of her introduction. Howdy there, name's Applejack, proud member of the Apple family. Applejack introduced herself as she shook Twilight's hand vigorously. Nice to meet you, so, what can I do you for? Twilight Sparkle cleared her throat. Well, I am in fact here to supervise preparations for the Summer Sun Festival. Are you the one in charge of the food? Sure am. Applejack proudly declared and then offered. Would you care to try a sample? As long as it doesn't take too long. Twilight Sparkle found herself covering her ears as the loud sound of a triangle ringing soon filled the area. Applejack turned towards the farm and took a deep breath. Soup's on, every pony. Her voice rung out through the acre. Y'all lucky ta come here first, said Applejack. You're just in time for the Apple family reunion. Now, why don't I introduce y'all to the Apple family? Thanks, but I really need to hurry, she tried to kindly rebuff, but Applejack wasn't taking no for an answer. This here's apple fritter. Apple bumpkin. Red gala. Red delicious, golden delicious, caramel apple strudel, apple tart, baked apples, apple brioche, apple cinnamon crisp. She paused, taking a deep breath, and hollered to the ponies she lived with. Big Macintosh, Apple Bloom and Granny Smith. Up Nadam, Granny Smith, we got guests. Sitting on the porch in a rocking chair was a mare with light lime green coat and a light gray mane. What? Soup's on. She slowly stirred then yawned. Her light brilliant orange eyes began to stir before she grabbed her cane. I'm up, here I come, I'm comin'. Trust me Twilight, you haven't had pie till you had an apple family pie. Naruto gushed as he eagerly went over to where the family was gathering. Okay, well, I can see the food situation is handled, so we'll be on our way. Twilight Sparkle reacted with a nervous laugh. The sheer number of ponies, noise and such were overwhelming. Twilight wasn't a sociable pony, so she wasn't used to such gatherings. Despite how appetizing the gathering of food was on the table, Twilight steeled her resolve. I have many things to do, so I really can't stay. The Apple family made an awe of disappointment. The filly known as Apple Bloom walked up to her. She was a little filly with amaranth-colored mane with a bow on it with a pale, light grayish olive coat. She was dressed in a pair of jean overalls with a lime green shirt underneath it and looked no older than 7 or 8 years old. "Aren't you gonna stay for brunch?" she said with big teary gambage eyes. Twilight Sparkle looked into those eyes. Those soul-crushing eyes of sadness. "Fine, I suppose I can stay for a bit," Twilight admitted in defeat. After the meal the three of them left Sweet Apple Acres. "Man, that was good. Not as good as Gems but good," Spike said as he patted his stomach. "Like I said, the food is great," Naruto paced. "So how'd you manage to meet the apples?" Twilight, made content by the delicious of the food, decided to make some small talk. "You seem to know them pretty well." A sigh escaped Naruto's lips as a memory of the earlier days came to his mind. "It happened around the time I first arrived to Ponyville," he said as he began thinking back to when he first arrived. And Naruto had woken up one morning and decided that it was time for him to start training. No matter how he tried to deal with it, he couldn't stand being so sluggish in this new body. It had been a few weeks since he arrived to this world and his chakra remained weak. After talking with many of the inhabitants in the town he learned about the Everfree Forest. From what he could gather from the details the inhabitants were willing to share the unnaturalness used to describe it, he took note of the place's behavior similar to how nature worked back home. The deeper he went into it the more familiar it became, making him realize this was the place he had woken up here a few days ago. The foliage, while familiar to what he was used to, there was differences. Among them was trees with monstrous-like jagged structures that came together to shape monster-like faces. As he continued on his trek, he would often come across dried twigs and leaves that would crunch under his hooves. He even found himself coming across a large river to which he traveled along it. A sigh escaped his lips as he couldn't recognize any familiar signs of the exact place where he woke up. Arriving at a small cliff, he stopped to see if he could catch a glimpse of some sort of movement. Suddenly, he heard what sounded like a stampede beneath him, actually causing him to lose a bit of his balance. Naruto stumbled and fell over the edge. After tumbling down and landing with a thud, he let out a groan and began coughing. He exhaled and clutched his side from the pain. He was a little bruised but no worse for wear. Suddenly a loud high-pitched scream echoed throughout the forest. Ai. The cry rang from a far-out distance. "Some pony help me." The cry caused Naruto's head to jolt up. Regardless of his situation, it wasn't in his nature to ignore someone in help. He ran to the source of the voice to see a young girl being pursued by a wolf-like creature. It had glowing slime green eyes and its body was made out of wood. Looking over the side, Naruto saw he was far too high up to climb down in time. He took a few steps back and took a leap, landing on the creature. It let out a yelp just as Naruto let out a hiss. The pain coursing through his leg definitely felt like he sprained it from the force of the jump. He leaped up off the creature and hobbled to the little pony. "You alright, little one?" he asked as the little pony nodded. Tears were flowing down her face and she was downright terrified. "Come on, let's get out of here before he wakes up," he suggested. "What's your name, little one?" "A Applebloom, mister," she answered. "What are you doing out here this far?" "Ah, was playing near my home and the log broke and went tumbling into the forest and got lost," she explained as her tail continued to quiver. "I've never seen you before, mister. Are you new to town?" "Indeed I am. How far is your place?" As long as he kept her mind off their current situation, the little filly would realize. He wasn't sure what kind of animals were in this world, but the animals he encountered had a sixth sense to fear. A piercing howl echoed through the air, causing the little pony to let out a cry and cling to him. Out from behind the trees several timberwolves began to appear. They definitely had a pack-like mentality like the wolves he knew. "Applebloom, run." "But mister." "Run now," he ordered her. As hurt as his leg was, or was it hoof? It didn't matter, he wasn't in much of a condition to run. "Go now." The filly hesitated before taking off. Some of the wolves attempted to chase after the smaller meal only for Naruto to charge forward and ran into the wolves. He let out a grunt, a resounding pain coursing through his head. He recovered, rolling away as the creatures nipped at him. "I may be part equine now, but I can still fight." The declaration was more for himself than the animals. Some of the wolves charged and Naruto attempted to punch them with his good hand, only to meet with a solid thud as a pair of claws tore through his back. He hissed as blood began to mat his back fur and he landed on his hooves. He jumped back on his hind legs, narrowly avoiding teeth sinking into his neck. The pack began to thin out and surround him. He was barely missing being pounced on as they tightened the circle and began driving him deeper into the forest. What could he do in this unfamiliar body? What good was his stamina if he couldn't properly utilize its strength? The wolves took charge and leaped. If he couldn't overpower them, maybe he could outrun them. Right when they were about to tear him apart, Naruto replaced himself with another one of the wolves. He nearly dropped from the sudden bout of exhaustion. Damn. Even his chakra control was off. He didn't bother to wait, taking off at breakneck speed. He turned, seeing that the Timberwolves were not going to quit in their hunt so easily. One wolf leaped and Naruto, catching sight out of the corner of his eye, reacted out of instinct and shot his back feet out. He, unlike most people, had used to animal-like instincts, so it was almost natural that he would react to them. The force of the blow nearly broke apart the body of the creature. Using his agility, Naruto took any opportunity he could to strike. After all, he may not have been a scholar, but he was a battle genius, and his experience in fighting allowed him to stay ahead of the creatures. As their numbers dwindled, so did his stamina. Naruto felt like his limbs were on fire. At this rate, if he kept going, he was going to be seriously injured or worse. Even after all this time. I'm still a stubborn idiot, but an image of the village came to the mind as well as his family. I lived a good life and accomplished quite a few things. I've always managed to survive, and I sure as hell don't plan on dying to wild animals. Just as the creatures charged, two figures leaped over him. A mare in a Stetson hat and the other wearing some sort of object he didn't recognize. One had a crimson coat and the other was orange like him, both with a gambage-colored hair, or manes as they were called on equines. With impressive strength, they sent two of the creatures flying, with the female throwing a kick and the male launching a punch respectively. The creatures seemed to rethink their strategy from having to deal with one injured adult to having to deal with him and the addition of two other healthy and strong adult ponies. The creatures found themselves driven back and away as the two earth ponies proved to be more formidable than the pack was willing to deal with. Try as he might, Naruto couldn't keep consciousness as he succumbed to his injuries. Naruto slowly began to stir as he realized he was no longer in the forest. He was staring at the wooden roof of a room. He turned his head slightly as his blurry vision made out a room of sorts with rays of sunlight peeking through curtains. He let out a soft exhale and began to set up. His body seized up and he let out a yelp of pain. "Whoa there, partner." A voice with a thick accent called out as a hand was placed on his chest. The accent was kind of familiar to the people who lived in the outer rim of water country that he had encountered during his training trip with Jiraiya. Naruto's vision began to clear as he made out the outline of its owner. It was a mare with a hat. "You'll plenty injured, need ta take it easy." Naruto, still a bit dazed, glanced down and noticed his body was bandaged. His eyes focused and he noticed the hand of his caretaker was bandaged as well. He couldn't help but wondered what happened. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice raspy thanks to the dryness of his mouth. As if instantly recognizing his mare brought up a cup to the blonde's lips, to which Naruto instantly began drinking from it. He paid no mind from the fact that droplets were spilling from his lips and down his chins. "I should be thanking you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know what would have happened to my dear little sister, so thank you," she said as she removed his name. "Name's Applejack." "Naruto," he introduced himself. Her reaction was one of perplex. "That's a rather unusual name if you don't mind me saying. What's a Naruto?" Before the blonde could respond, an aged voice called down from the hallway. "Applejack. How's our guest? He up yet?" "Yeah, Granny," she hollered. "Hey there, sonny, glad to see ya up and at 'em," greeted an elderly male as she entered the room using a cane. From what Naruto could gauge, she was in at least her 70s, wearing a white shawl of sorts over her shoulders. She was wearing an old checker pattern dress of a dark blue color. Following behind her was a rather tall pony of intimating stature. "Them varmints roughed you up pretty nadly, though nothing we hadn't dealt with before, so we'll have you fit as a fiddle in no time. Name's Apple Smith, but folks round these parts call me Granny Apple, and the feller next to me is my grandson Big Macintosh. Ah, see, you already met my eldest granddaughter." "Indeed I have, ma'am. I owe your family a great gratitude for saving my life and tending to my injuries." "Nonsense," the elderly mare began with a wheezing exhale. "You saved the life of my youngest grandbaby, if anything we're indebted to you." As the elderly mare finished, Naruto, something a bow peeked out from behind her. "Come now, don't be shy, child." She ushered the little one forward. Naruto instantly recognized the little mare from the forest. He noticed that she looked plenty sad and her ears even seemed to droop. "I'm sorry, mister," she began with a dejected sniff. "It's my fault you got hurt coming to rescue me." "Nonsense," Naruto said as he gave the child his warmest smile. "I was the fool charging right into the Everfree knowing full and well I wasn't in top condition. If anything, little one, you really helped me out. I don't think I would have made it if I wasn't drawn so close to the farm. So don't be sad anymore, okay?" "Oh, okay," the filly replied, feeling less torn up than earlier. When she saw the nice stallion that saved her being carried in by her brother looking like a right mess, she was really upset. Hearing that he didn't blame her helped her feel better. The others watched on warmly as this kind stranger assuaged the guilt of the youngest Apple. "Hey mister, what's your name?" "Naruto Uzumaki." He introduced himself as the other members of the Apple clan shared a look, wondering if they had misheard him. I've been told my name's unusual. It means maelstrom," he added, hoping that they wouldn't push the issue further. The apples wondered if maybe Naruto was from one of the distant settlements that broke off from the main pony society some time ago. That would explain his name and his willingness to wander into the Everfree like that. Well then Mr. Naruto, I hope you hungry cuz supper's about ready and you gonna need to build up your strength. Naruto would soon come to learn in the following days what it meant to be an apple. As he recovered from his injuries he began to adjust to the diet of a pony. He missed meat sure, but at least this body found vegetables and fruit far more agreeable than his human form. Not to mention Applebloom silently appointed herself to the role of Naruto's companion. With the exception of school and having to turn in early because of her young age, one would hardly find one without the other. One evening proved to be the exception. Naruto found himself wandering the grounds when he caught sight of Applejack at work. Sweat stained the cotton white shirt she was wearing, signifying that she was hard at work. Naruto watched as the mare bolted forward suddenly towards an apple tree. He watched in awe as she took to the air and with a single solid kick, sent a solid force strong enough to dislodge all the apples from the branches into the buckets below. She wasn't so much as fazed or affected by the action. That much strength and control and she treated the feat like it was nothing. It was at that moment Naruto knew what he was going to do. After seeing how casually Big Mac could pull a cart full of apples the other day, indicating that he had immense strength, Naruto made the decision to ask the apple siblings to train him. It was a hard pill to swallow, but Naruto was never going to get back to his former level of strength without starting over. He was going to have to start from the basics and work his way up. At that point Naruto finished his story. That was pretty courageous of you to charge in like that. Weren't you scared? Twilight wondered. I was more scared for the voice calling out than my own safety. It's been quite a while since that time of course, and I'm more than fit to fight off the Timberwolves if I ever encounter them again. So are you ready to go? Twilight sighed contentedly, patting her full stomach. I might need a minute, she said. That was probably the greatest meal I have had in my entire life. Glad you liked it, Sugarcube, Applejack said as she came over and took a seat. Don't get that many new folks around these parts nowadays. Always nice to see a new and friendly face. Glad to see you enjoyed yourself. I was just following the atmosphere, Twilight said. You have a very nice family. Why, thank you, Applejack said. What about yourself? Got any family back in Camelot? Yes actually, Twilight said. My mom's a novelist and my dad sits on the Canterlot Council and my brother's second in command of the Royal Guard. Applejack whistled. The Royal Guard, huh? Protecting the Princess herself. Heck, I bet you get to see her all the time. I actually spoke with her last evening, Twilight responded casually. You've met the princess? Applejack asked staring wide-eyed at Twilight. More times than I can count, Twilight boasted with a hint of pride. I've been her protege for over 13 years now, learning all I can about magic. Applejack laughed boisterously, slapping Twilight on the back. Had I known the princess's prized apprentice be showing up that would have brought out the good silverware. Oh, that's alright, Twilight said. I've never really been fond of fancy parties and the like. Me neither. Applejack laughed. Looks like we got a lot in common. Sorry if this comes off as rude, but we really have to go. She said, grabbing Spike's shoulder and shaking awake the dazed dragon. The food was so delicious the little dragon was hit with the it is during mid-meal. Well, it has been a lovely meal, and I thank you for your hospitality. I believe I can cross food off the list of things that I need to check off, she said without emotion, not even noticing that she had practically repeated herself. She turned to Naruto who had been oddly quiet during the exchange. For the next item on our list I need to speak with a Miss Rainbow Dash about the weather. She glanced up at the sky, which had become cloudier and cloudier over the course of the hour-long lunch. And I can assume she's not the best at her job. Actually Rain's pretty good at her job. She can be a bit lazy so once we find her the weather should be taken care of in not time. Naruto reassured her. Twilight was a bit doubtful, but she kept the opinion to herself. I'll be seeing you later Naruto. Applejack bid the blonde a goodbye with a wink, careful to make sure Twilight didn't notice. The smile tugged at his lips, it surprises me how fast pinks can be sometimes. Naruto thought as he returned the wink. Alright Miss Sparkle we'll have to head back in town. I have a good idea where Rainbow Dash is. He said as he led her and the lumbering dragon back to town. Chapter end. Alright that's it for today's video guys, let me know in the comments section how was the story and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video, peace out.